The beach house stood at the edge of a quiet stretch of shoreline, where the waves rolled in gently and the sunsets painted the sky in shades of gold and orange. Every board, every window, every room carried a memory. It wasn't just a house to me. It was the result of decades of hard work, sacrifice, and dreams. I bought it 20 years ago after working countless overtime shifts and saving every extra dollar I could. My husband and I had always dreamed of owning a place by the ocean. We imagined spending our retirement there, watching our grandchildren run through the sand and listening to the sound of the waves from the porch. But life didn't go as planned. My husband passed away unexpectedly before we could enjoy those dreams together. After his death, the beach house became my refuge. Whenever the grief felt too heavy, I would drive there and spend a few days alone. Somehow, the ocean always seemed to understand my sadness. My daughter Emily loved the house when she was younger. She spent every summer there. We built sandcastles together, collected seashells, and stayed up late talking under the stars. Back then, I believed nothing could ever come between us. As the years passed, however, things changed. Emily became more focused on appearances and social status. She married a man named Brian, who constantly talked about investments, luxury vacations, and expensive neighborhoods. Their lives seemed centered around having more money, bigger homes, newer cars. At first, I ignored the warning signs. Whenever Emily visited, she asked questions that made me uncomfortable. "Mom, have you thought about selling the beach house? You'd make a fortune in today's market. What are you even using it for now?" I always smiled and changed the subject. "The house isn't for sale," I would say. She would shrug, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. Months passed without much contact. Calls became less frequent. Visits became rare. Sometimes I felt as though I was slowly disappearing from her life. Still, she was my daughter. No matter how distant she became, I continued loving her. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a quiet afternoon. I was watering flowers in my backyard when my phone rang. Emily's name appeared on the screen. A smile crossed my face. I hadn't heard from her in nearly 3 weeks. "Emily," I answered cheerfully. Her voice sounded rushed. "Mom, we're leaving tomorrow." I frowned. "Leaving? Leaving for where?" She ignored the question. "Your beach house has already been sold. Bye." For a moment, I thought I had heard her incorrectly. The watering can slipped slightly in my hand. "What?" "The house is sold," she repeated casually. "The paperwork is handled." I felt my heart pounding. "What are you talking about? That's my house." There was a brief silence. Then she laughed. "Mom, relax. You'll thank me later. The market is perfect right now." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "You sold my house without asking me?" "It was the smart thing to do," she replied. "Anyway, we're busy packing." The calmness in her voice hurt more than the words themselves. This wasn't a misunderstanding. She genuinely believed she had the right to make that decision. I stared across my garden, unable to speak for several seconds. Then, something unexpected happened. Instead of becoming angry, I started smiling. A very small smile at first, because suddenly I realized something Emily clearly didn't know. "Emily," I said softly. "What?" "You forgot one thing." The confidence in her voice disappeared. "What are you talking about?" I couldn't help laughing. Not because the situation was funny, because she had made a mistake so enormous that the entire plan was about to collapse. The silence on the other end of the line grew longer. "Mom?" she asked nervously. But I didn't answer her question. Instead, I simply said, "You'll find out soon enough." Then I ended the call. As I lowered the phone, the ocean breeze seemed to drift through my memories once again. Emily thought she had won. She thought the house was gone. What she didn't know was that the beach house carried a secret she had never bothered to learn. And very soon, that secret was going to change everything. After ending the call, I stood motionless in my garden for several minutes. The flowers around me blurred as 1,000 thoughts rushed through my mind. Any mother would have been furious, and part of me certainly was. But beneath the shock and disappointment, there was something else, a strange sense of certainty. Emily believed she had sold the beach house. The problem was that she had no idea what she was actually dealing with. That evening, I sat in my living room and thought back to a conversation that had taken place years earlier. It was shortly after my husband's death. Losing him had forced me to reconsider many things, including how I managed my finances and property. At the time, I had met with my longtime attorney, Robert, a man who had known our family for decades. He wasn't just a lawyer. He had been a trusted friend who helped us through some of the most difficult moments of our lives. During one of our meetings, he had asked a simple question: "What do you want to happen to the beach house in the future?" I remembered staring out his office window before answering, "I want it protected." Robert nodded. Protected from whom? At first, I didn't understand what he meant. Then he explained that family properties often became sources of conflict. Good people sometimes made bad decisions when money became involved. His advice was straightforward. If the beach house truly mattered to me, I should place it into a family trust designed to protect it for future generations. After weeks of consideration, I followed his recommendation. The process wasn't complicated, but it was thorough. Ownership of the property was transferred into the trust. Clear rules were established regarding its management and any future sale. No single family member could decide to sell it. Any transfer required approval from the trustee and strict legal procedures. At the time, I never imagined those protections would become necessary. I trusted Emily completely. Why wouldn't I? She was my daughter. The trust simply felt like a responsible precaution. Years passed, and I rarely thought about it again. Now, standing in my kitchen with my phone in hand, I realized how important that decision had become. The next morning, I called Robert. He answered on the second ring. "Good morning, how are you?" "I've had better mornings," I replied. Within minutes, I explained everything. Robert listened quietly without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long pause. Finally, he spoke. "Are you telling me Emily attempted to sell the beach house?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you." "And she believes the transaction is complete?" "Apparently." I could almost hear him shaking his head. "Well, that's impossible." I smiled slightly. "I know." Over the next several hours, Robert began making calls. He contacted the real estate agency involved in the transaction. He reviewed documents. He spoke with individuals connected to the sale. The more information he gathered, the more unbelievable the situation became. Emily had apparently presented herself as someone with authority over the property. Whether she misunderstood the ownership structure or simply assumed she could handle everything herself, the result was the same. The transaction had serious problems. By late afternoon, Robert called me back. "I have good news." I sat down immediately. "I'm listening." "The property remains exactly where it has always been." "What about the buyer?" "They've been notified that ownership cannot legally be transferred." Relief washed over me. The house was safe. Every memory attached to it remained protected. The porch where my husband and I watched sunsets. The hallway where Emily took her first steps during a family vacation. The small wooden deck where countless summer dinners had taken place. None of it was going anywhere. Meanwhile, Emily had no idea what was happening. In her mind, everything was probably proceeding according to plan. Perhaps she was already discussing future purchases. Maybe she was calculating profits. But reality was moving in a very different direction. Before ending the call, Robert added one final comment. "I suspect your daughter is about to receive several unexpected phone calls." I couldn't help smiling. For years I had avoided conflict. I had chosen patience over arguments. But sometimes the truth has a way of defending itself. And for the first time since that shocking phone call, I felt completely calm. Emily thought she had solved a problem. Instead, she had created one. The secret she overlooked all those years ago was about to reveal itself, and when it did, every part of her carefully constructed plan would begin to unravel. The unraveling began sooner than I expected. 2 days after our phone conversation, my phone rang early in the morning. Emily's name flashed across the screen again. This time, I didn't hear confidence when I answered. I heard panic. "Mom, what did you do?" I remained calm. "Good morning to you too." "Don't do that," she snapped. "The buyer is calling me. The real estate company is calling me. Some attorney contacted them and now everyone's saying the sale can't go through." I leaned back in my chair. "I didn't do anything, Emily." "Then why is this happening?" Because it was finally time for her to hear the truth. "It's happening because the beach house was never yours to sell." Silence filled the line. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then she laughed nervously. "Mom, that doesn't make any sense." "It makes perfect sense." I explained only the basics. The property belonged to the family trust. Legal protections had been established years ago. No transfer could happen without proper authorization. As I spoke, her confidence faded. "Nobody ever told me that." The statement hurt more than she realized. "Emily, you never asked." Another long silence followed. This time, there was no anger in it, only confusion. When the call ended, I sat quietly and looked out the window. I didn't feel victorious. I felt sad. The situation wasn't about winning. It was about discovering how far apart we had grown. Over the next few days, the consequences continued spreading. The buyer demanded answers. The real estate agency reviewed every document. Questions began appearing from people who had previously accepted Emily's version of events without hesitation. Family members started calling me. Some were shocked. Others were embarrassed because they had assumed I had approved the sale. Little by little, the truth emerged. No dramatic confrontation was necessary. Facts were doing all the work. One afternoon, my sister called. "I can't believe this happened." "Neither can I." "Emily told everyone she was helping you." I closed my eyes. That's what hurts the most. Because deep down, I wanted to believe Emily had convinced herself she was helping. That maybe she had become so focused on money and opportunities that she lost sight of basic boundaries. But intentions didn't erase actions. Trust had been broken. A week later, I received another call. This time, it wasn't Emily. It was Brian. My son-in-law sounded exhausted. I didn't know the whole story. His voice carried genuine frustration. "When did you find out?" "After the attorneys started contacting everyone." I listened quietly. "I asked Emily why she never checked ownership before moving forward," he continued. "She doesn't really have an answer." That didn't surprise me. People often rush toward what they want to believe. Emily wanted to believe the house was hers to control, so she never stopped to question the assumption. Several days later, another unexpected call arrived. Emily wanted to meet. Not over the phone, not through messages, face to face. We agreed to meet at a small cafe near the beach. When I arrived, she was already there. For a moment, I barely recognized her. The confidence that usually surrounded her was gone. She looked tired, worried, smaller somehow. I sat across from her. Neither of us spoke immediately. The sounds of waves drifted through an open window nearby. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "I'm sorry." The words came quietly. I looked into her eyes. For the first time in a long while, I saw vulnerability instead of certainty. "Are you sorry because the sale failed?" I asked gently, "or because of what happened between us?" Tears appeared almost instantly. That answer told me everything. She lowered her gaze. "I don't know." At least it was honest. For the next hour, we talked more openly than we had in years. I told her how much the phone call had hurt, How hearing her casually announce the sale made me feel as though my opinions no longer mattered. How painful it was realizing she viewed something filled with family memories as little more than a financial asset. She listened, really listened. There were no excuses, no arguments, no attempts to shift blame. As the conversation ended, Emily wiped tears from her eyes. "I never thought about it that way." "I know." That was the problem. She hadn't thought about it at all. When we stood to leave, neither of us knew what would happen next. An apology couldn't instantly repair years of distance. Trust doesn't return overnight. It must be rebuilt one decision at a time. As I watched my daughter walk toward the parking lot, I felt something I hadn't felt since this entire situation began. Hope. The truth had finally come out. The sale had failed. The house remained protected. But the most important question still remained unanswered. Would Emily learn from her mistake? Or had the real test only just begun? The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. After our meeting at the cafe, Emily didn't call every day. She didn't send long messages trying to explain herself. In a strange way, I appreciated that. For once, she wasn't looking for a quick solution. She seemed to understand that some things take time. Trust is one of them. At first, I wasn't sure what would happen between us. The hurt I felt wasn't something that disappeared overnight. Every time I thought about that phone call, I remembered how casually she had spoken. "Your beach house has already been sold. Bye." Those words had stayed with me. Not because of the property itself, but because they revealed how little consideration she had given me in that moment. Yet, as the days passed, I began noticing small changes. Emily started visiting more often. Sometimes she would stop by with coffee. Sometimes she would help me with groceries or spend an afternoon talking in the garden. She never brought up the house unless I did. She never pressured me for forgiveness. She simply showed up. And slowly, that mattered. One Saturday morning, she surprised me by asking if I wanted to spend the weekend at the beach house. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The invitation carried meaning beyond the words themselves. It was her way of acknowledging what the house represented: not money, not an investment, family. We drove there together the next day. As soon as the ocean came into view, memories flooded back. The same wooden fence stood near the entrance. The same weathered porch overlooked the water. The same wind carried the scent of salt and sea. For years I had worried that those memories would eventually fade. Instead, they felt stronger than ever. Emily walked through the front door slowly, looking around as though she were seeing the place for the first time. Her eyes stopped at an old photograph hanging on the wall. It showed her as a little girl sitting on her father's shoulders on the beach. She stared at it for a long time. "I remember that day," she said softly. "So do I." She smiled sadly. "I haven't thought about it in years." That statement explained more than she realized. Somewhere along the way, she had become so focused on building her future that she had forgotten parts of her past. The rest of the weekend passed peacefully. We cooked dinner together. We walked along the shoreline. We talked about family memories that hadn't been discussed in years. For the first time in a long while, it felt like I had my daughter back. On our final evening, we sat on the porch watching the sunset. The sky glowed with brilliant shades of orange and gold. Emily broke the silence. "I finally understand what you meant." I turned toward her. "What do you mean?" "When you said I forgot one thing." A small smile appeared on my face. "The trust?" She nodded. "Not just the legal trust." I waited. She looked toward the ocean. "I forgot something much bigger." The wind gently moved her hair as she continued. "I forgot that the house wasn't valuable because of what it could be sold for." Tears filled her eyes. It was valuable because of what it meant. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I reached over and squeezed her hand. That was the real lesson. Not the failed sale, not the legal documents, not the embarrassment she experienced afterward. The true lesson was understanding the difference between price and value. One can be measured, the other cannot. Several months later, I made an important decision. Rather than keeping the beach house closed for most of the year, I created a program that allowed local community organizations to use it for family retreats and charity events during certain seasons. The property would continue serving people instead of sitting empty. When I told Emily about the idea, she immediately volunteered to help. And she did. She organized events, coordinated schedules, and spent countless hours making sure families enjoyed the same happiness our family once experienced there. Watching her work reminded me of the person she had always been beneath the distractions and mistakes. The revenge she expected never came. There were no courtroom battles, no dramatic punishments, no attempts to humiliate her. The sweetest revenge was simply allowing the truth to reveal itself. Her own actions created the consequences. My role was only to protect what mattered. Years later, whenever we sat together on that porch watching the sunset, we rarely discussed the attempted sale. We didn't need to. The lesson remained with us. Money comes and goes. Property can be bought and sold, but trust, once broken, must be rebuilt carefully. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't proving someone wrong. It's giving them the chance to become better. As the waves rolled gently onto the shore and the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, I realized the beach house had given me one final gift. It hadn't just protected our family memories. It had helped save our family itself.